The radio crackled with panic. 6 enemy fighter jets inbound. General Peterson's aircraft is down. But Captain Sophia "Viper" Hayes wasn't running. She was about to prove that sometimes one pilot can outfight an entire enemy squadron while saving a captured general. Meet Captain Sophia Hayes, 30 years old. Auburn hair always pulled back in regulation style. Steel blue eyes that had logged over 2,500 combat flight hours in the most contested airspace on Earth for 5 years. She had piloted F-16 Fighting Falcons for the 388th Fighter Wing, but to most of her colleagues, she was still just a female pilot who happened to be exceptionally skilled. They acknowledged her abilities, but few truly believed she could handle the most dangerous solo missions that defined elite fighter pilots. Sophia's path to the cockpit had been anything but conventional. The daughter of Admiral William "Thunder" Hayes, one of the Navy's most decorated aviators, she had grown up surrounded by aviation excellence. But unlike other military children who followed expected paths, Sophia had fought for every opportunity in a profession that still questioned whether women belonged in combat aircraft. Her father had been initially skeptical when Sophia announced her intention to become a fighter pilot. "Baby girl," he had said during one of their difficult conversations, "flying fighters isn't just about skill. It's about split-second decisions in life or death situations. The physical and psychological demands are—" "What, Dad?" Sophia had interrupted. "Too much for a woman?" "Because my test scores, my flight evaluations, and my tactical knowledge suggest otherwise." Admiral Hayes had eventually become her strongest supporter, but only after Sophia proved herself repeatedly in scenarios where other pilots failed. Her training scores weren't just exceptional. They demonstrated innovative tactical thinking that impressed even veteran instructors who had been teaching fighter combat for decades. Sophia's childhood had been uniquely shaped by aviation culture. While other military children moved from base to base, experiencing standard military life, she had grown up in the cockpits of naval aircraft, learning systems and procedures before she could properly drive a car. Her father had taught her that aviation wasn't just about flying. It was about understanding the complete tactical environment and making decisions that others couldn't anticipate. Every summer during her teenage years had been spent at aviation camps and flight schools where she competed against the sons of other military officers. She consistently outperformed male cadets who assumed her presence was due to political correctness rather than genuine ability. These early experiences taught her that proving herself wasn't a one-time event. It was a continuous process that would define her entire career. By the time she was 16, Sophia could disassemble and reassemble an aircraft engine faster than most seasoned mechanics. She understood aerodynamics not just theoretically but instinctively, feeling how air moved over wings and control surfaces in ways that couldn't be taught from textbooks alone. At the Naval Academy, Sophia had graduated second in her class with a degree in aerospace engineering, specializing in advanced flight dynamics and tactical systems. Her thesis on innovative air-to-air combat techniques had been classified and incorporated into pilot training programs. But despite her academic excellence, she still faced instructors who questioned whether she had the killer instinct required for combat aviation. During flight training, Sophia had broken several records for precision flying and tactical innovation. Her instructors noted that she didn't just learn procedures. She understood the underlying principles and found ways to improve them. Her approach to combat scenarios was so unconventional that other students studied her techniques to understand how she achieved superior results. One particular training exercise had become legendary among her peers. During a simulated dogfight against 4 experienced instructors, Sophia had used terrain masking and unpredictable energy management to systematically eliminate each opponent within 12 minutes. The instructors, some with 20 years of combat experience, had never encountered such aggressive yet calculated flying. They reviewed the gun camera footage repeatedly, trying to understand how a trainee had defeated them using tactics they had never seen before. Sophia had earned her call sign "Viper" during her first deployment to the Middle East when she single-handedly destroyed an enemy surface-to-air missile site that had been threatening coalition aircraft. Her approach had been so unexpected, so tactically brilliant that enemy forces never realized they were under attack until their entire air defense network was in flames. "Hayes doesn't just fly her F-16, one squadron commander had written in an evaluation. She thinks 3 moves ahead of everyone else in the sky. Her tactical innovations are changing how we approach air-to-air combat." The mission that earned her the Viper call sign had been particularly challenging. Intelligence reports indicated that enemy forces had deployed advanced surface-to-air missile systems that were downing coalition aircraft with alarming frequency. Standard suppression techniques had failed, and the enemy air defense network was effectively denying airspace to friendly forces. Sophia had volunteered for a solo mission that other pilots considered suicidal, penetrating the heart of enemy air defenses to eliminate their command and control systems. Her approach had been revolutionary. Instead of trying to avoid the missile sites, she had used them against each other, triggering engagement sequences that caused the enemy systems to attack each other while she eliminated their radar guidance. Systems. The night before that mission, Sophia had spent hours studying satellite imagery and signals intelligence, looking for patterns that others had missed. She noticed that the enemy missile batteries were positioned in overlapping coverage zones, designed to protect each other, but also creating potential fratricide scenarios if their tracking systems could be confused. She developed a flight profile that would exploit these vulnerabilities, using chaff and electronic countermeasures to make the enemy systems see threats where none existed. When she executed the mission, enemy radar operators watched in horror as their own missiles destroyed friendly positions, believing they were tracking hostile aircraft. But despite her proven capabilities, Sophia still faced skepticism from commanders, who assigned her to appropriate missions rather than the high-risk operations that built legendary careers. She flew close air support, interdiction missions, and defensive patrols, while male pilots with inferior records received the assignments that mattered. The discrimination wasn't always overt, but it was persistent. Mission assignments that should have gone to the most qualified pilot were often given to men, who commanders felt were better suited for dangerous operations. Sophia's tactical innovations were studied and implemented, but the credit often went to male officers, who had the confidence to present her ideas as their own. She remembered one particularly frustrating briefing where a male captain had presented her own tactical analysis as his work, receiving commendations while she sat silently in the back of the room. When she confronted him afterward, he had shrugged and said, "You're good at tactics, Hayes, but you don't have the command presence to sell them to leadership. I'm doing you a favor by getting your ideas implemented." The injustice burned, but Sophia had learned that fighting every battle would only brand her as difficult rather than talented. General Marcus Peterson was everything Sophia aspired to become, a warrior leader who had earned respect through decades of exceptional service. At 58 years old, he commanded the entire theater of operations, making strategic decisions that affected thousands of soldiers and airmen. Peterson was also one of the few senior officers who judged pilots by their performance rather than their gender. "Hayes is one of the finest tactical minds I've encountered," he had told the Pentagon during discussions about promoting more women to combat roles. "Her innovations in air-to-air tactics are being studied by fighter pilots worldwide." Gender is irrelevant when lives are on the line. Peterson had personally intervened to ensure that Sophia received assignments commensurate with her abilities. Under his command, she had been given increasingly challenging missions that showcased her capabilities and built the combat record that male pilots took for granted. His mentorship had been crucial in developing her confidence and tactical expertise. He had once told her during a private conversation, "Captain Hayes, I've commanded hundreds of pilots in my career. Maybe a dozen were truly exceptional, the kind who changed how we think about air combat. You're one of them. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The mission that would define both their careers started as routine reconnaissance. Peterson was conducting a forward command inspection, flying in a modified C-130 transport to visit remote bases near the Syrian border. Sophia was assigned as escort, leading a four-ship formation of F-16s, providing air cover for the general's aircraft. The intelligence briefing had been standard: minimal enemy air activity, low-threat environment, expected flight time of 2 hours. But intelligence is never perfect, and routine missions have a way of becoming disasters when the enemy decides to change the rules. The briefing had been conducted by Colonel Davis, the intelligence officer who had been tracking enemy air movements for 6 months. His assessment was based on patterns that suggested enemy fighter aircraft were being conserved for defensive operations rather than offensive strikes. Recent reconnaissance flights had encountered minimal resistance, leading to the conclusion that enemy air capabilities had been significantly degraded. But what the intelligence community didn't know was that enemy forces had been deliberately creating false patterns, conserving their aircraft for a coordinated strike against high-value coalition targets. Peterson's inspection flight represented exactly the kind of opportunity they had been waiting for: a chance to eliminate senior American leadership while demonstrating their continued ability to challenge coalition air superiority. The morning had been clear and calm as Sophia performed her pre-flight checks. Her crew chief, Master Sergeant Rodriguez, had ensured her F-16 was in perfect condition. "She's ready to dance, Captain," he had said with his usual grin. Rodriguez had been maintaining aircraft for 15 years and took personal pride in knowing that his pilots flew the most reliable jets in the squadron. Sophia trusted him completely, knowing that every system had been checked and double-checked. At 14:30 hours, Sophia's radar detected multiple contacts approaching from the northeast. 6 aircraft in attack formation, moving fast and showing no response to radio challenges. The enemy had somehow positioned a full fighter squadron exactly where Peterson's aircraft would be most vulnerable. "Viper Lead, this is Thunder Base." The AWACS controller's voice carried urgent concern. "We're showing 6 bandits bearing 045, distance 40 miles, and closing. Recommend immediate evasive action." Sophia looked at her tactical display, quickly assessing the situation that was developing. Peterson C-130 was a sitting duck, a slow, lumbering transport aircraft with no defensive capabilities against modern fighter jets. Her own formation was outnumbered and outpositioned, caught escorting a high-value target through airspace that had suddenly become a killing field. "Thunder Base, Viper Lead, what's our backup? How long until additional support arrives?" "Viper Lead, nearest friendlies are 20 minutes out." "You're on your own." 20 minutes might as well have been 20 hours. The enemy fighters would reach Peterson's aircraft in less than 5 minutes, and Sophia's formation couldn't protect a transport aircraft against 6 dedicated attackers. Her mind raced through tactical options, each one ending in disaster. Standard doctrine called for the escorts to stay with the transport, using defensive maneuvers and hoping reinforcements arrived in time. But hope wasn't a strategy, and Peterson would be dead long before help arrived. That's when Sophia made the decision that would either save a general or cost her everything. "Viper 2, through 4, escort Thunder home to safety. I'll delay the bandits." "Viper Lead, that's suicide. You can't engage 6 fighters alone." "Viper 2, I'm not planning to engage them. I'm planning to destroy them." The radio went silent for a moment as her wingman processed what she had just said. Then Viper 2 responded, his voice tight with concern. "Good hunting, Viper Lead. We'll get the general home." Sophia broke away from the formation, climbing to 25,000 feet and positioning herself between the enemy fighters and Peterson's escape route. Her F-16 carried 6 AIM-120 Armra missiles and 2 AIM-9 Sidewinders. Enough firepower to engage multiple targets, but only if she used them with perfect tactical precision. The enemy formation was confident, flying in textbook attack formation toward what they believed was a helpless transport aircraft with minimal escort. They had no idea they were about to face a pilot who had revolutionized air-to-air tactics. Through innovations that other fighter pilots considered impossible, Sophia's first advantage was psychological. The enemy pilots expected to encounter defensive flying from an outnumbered escort. Instead, they found themselves facing an aggressive attack that violated everything they knew about conventional fighter tactics. Her father's lessons echoed. In her memory, when you're outnumbered, the only advantage you have is doing something the enemy doesn't expect. Make them fight your battle, not theirs. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency, configuring her weapon systems for rapid engagement. She selected her first AMRAAM, waiting for the perfect firing solution. The enemy formation was at 35 miles now, close enough for a shot, but far enough that they wouldn't expect aggression from a lone defender. This was the moment that would determine everything. Her first AMRAAM missile launched from maximum range, targeting the enemy formation leader. But instead of waiting to see results, Sophia immediately maneuvered for her second shot, using techniques her father had taught her about engaging multiple threats in rapid succession. The enemy formation leader never saw the missile that killed him. One moment, he was leading an attack on a defenseless transport aircraft. The next moment, his aircraft was disintegrating in a fireball that scattered debris across the Syrian sky. "Lead is down!" screamed another enemy pilot. "Where did that missile come from?" Sophia's second missile was already in the air, tracking toward the wingman who had been flying in close formation with the leader. The enemy pilots scattered, their confident attack formation dissolving into chaos as they realized they were facing a threat they hadn't anticipated. But breaking formation was exactly what Sophia wanted. Separated targets were easier to engage systematically, and panic made pilots predictable. The second kill came 8 seconds after the first. Another fireball marked where an enemy fighter had been. 4 remaining hostile aircraft, now defensive and confused, trying to locate the threat that had appeared from nowhere. Sophia nosed her F-16 over, accelerating toward the enemy formation while maintaining energy advantage. Her third AMRAAM selected, locked, and launched in a fluid sequence that would have been impossible for most pilots to execute under such extreme conditions. 3 down, 3 to go. But now the enemy pilots understood what was happening, and they were maneuvering to engage her. Sophia's tactical display showed 2 fighters turning hard to intercept while the third maintained course toward Peterson's fleeing transport. She made another split-second decision, prioritizing the immediate threat to the general over her own safety. Her fourth AMRAAM streaked toward the fighter pursuing Peterson, crossing 25 miles in seconds. The enemy pilot never had a chance to fire his own weapons. The missile detonated in a proximity burst, shredding his aircraft with fragments traveling at supersonic velocity. 4 kills. 2 enemies remaining, both now fully committed to destroying her. Sophia dove hard, building speed while her radar warning receiver screamed about incoming missiles. The enemy pilots had finally gotten organized enough to shoot back. She deployed chaff and flares while performing a high-G barrel roll that would have grayed out most pilots. Her vision narrowed as blood drained from her brain, but years of conditioning kept her conscious and fighting. The enemy missiles lost lock, confused by her countermeasures and violent maneuvering. She reversed hard, pulling her F-16 through a punishing turn that brought one of the enemy fighters into her sights. At this range, AMRAAM missiles were overkill. She selected her Sidewinder, hearing the growl of the infrared seeker as it locked onto the enemy jet's hot engines. Fox 2, the Sidewinder leaped off her wing rail, tracking toward the enemy fighter with relentless precision. 5 down. 1 remaining. But her missile count was getting low, and the last enemy pilot was good, performing defensive maneuvers. That forced Sophia to work for her final shot. They merged in a classic dogfight, circling each other at high speed while each pilot tried to gain positional advantage. This was where natural talent and thousands of training hours mattered most. Sophia used every trick she knew, every tactical innovation she had developed. She flew her F-16 to its absolute limits, accepting risks that would have terrified other pilots. The enemy pilot was skilled, but Sophia was better. After 40 seconds of brutal aerial combat, she maneuvered into firing position. Her last Sidewinder launched, and moments later the 6th enemy fighter exploded in flames. Silence fell over the radio. 6 hostile aircraft destroyed in less than 4 minutes by a single pilot, who wasn't supposed to be capable of such combat excellence. Sophia's hands were shaking from adrenaline as she turned toward home, her fuel gauge showing critically low levels from all the high-speed maneuvering. Thunder Base, Viper lead, all bandits are down, the general is safe. Requesting tanker support. For return to base. The AWACS controller's voice was filled with awe. Viper lead, tanker is already en route. That was the most incredible display of air combat we've ever witnessed. Welcome home, Captain Hayes.